Have you ever wondered how the math actually works in Starship Fleet Command? How is battle order determined? Have you ever been like my friend right here from server 61 going, who attacks first and why? Not just in PvP, but in PvE, armadas, entities, etc. Well, this video is going to break it down, whether you're a brand new player, and I do believe this is a new player must watch, or whether you're an established player, this is going to be one that you're going to want to pay attention to so that you can understand how you do this. How you determine that your ECHEB procs faster. Well, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and thank you for being here. Let's break down what is an overcomplicated game, but let's simplify it and make it easy to understand. Roll it.
Fancy intro music, yeah! Woohoo!
Okay, so let's start with round structure and ship firing order. How does that work? Well, let's cover the basics with this pretty graphic I made, and you can grab this and share it with your alliance if you want to. It'll be very helpful. So, we're going to start with PvP, but technically the order works completely 1 through 6 in any situation, but this is the general how things work. Now, defending a station. So we're using station defense here as a thing. So say if you're defending a station, your guns are always going to fire first. Keep in mind, this does not include things like, ROM's ability, which would delay that. Now, there's a reason that ROM works, and we'll actually explain that in the video when we get to how rounds are actually laid out, individual round by sub-round, etc. But don't worry too much about that. What you need to know, blanket, defending station guns go before PvP attacker. Next up, you have ships of the PvP attacker go before ships of the PvP defender. So attackers go first. Simple. That's why you have things like ECHEB, who if you attack in round 1, like in the battle that you can see behind me, I attacked first, his cascade ability works for 3 rounds because he's able to activate before anybody was to apply a state, whether I'm applying a state to myself or whether somebody applies a state to me. In this instance, be worrying about somebody applying hull breach to me or something like that. But ECHEB's able to proc first because of the round order of the attacker goes first, meaning whoever initiates the attack is getting that advantage. We talked about those 2 officers here on the screen when they came out, how that could be very valuable. Let's move on to PvE. So all NPCs, gold hostile bosses, red hostiles, entities, armadas, bounty hunters, etc. always fire before players. They get the advantage, which is also why the game has these mechanics like the go-home guns of these India aquatics, the warp core breach of the D7 hostiles and augment exile space. That's how all of those work, because they are guaranteed that when the round begins, they are the first ones to have anything initiate. So keep that in mind when you're going in to fight these hostiles. That is the advantage they have, so anything you can do to maybe that delays that can be to your effect. So Armada leader goes before any of the ally ships in an Armada list. The starred ships will actually go before the non-starred ships, and if you don't have the starring system in this example, then it would be by ship power. So if I was in an Armada with my good friend behind me, he's got a stronger ship. If I was not the leader, he would go before me unless I was starred, and then I would go before him. Now, that's the basics of how rounds work. There you go. But I'm sure many of you want to go in a little bit more detail. How exactly are rounds structured? Well, I have another pretty graphic for you right here. This pretty graphic goes over how things actually get structured in the game. We'll go into even more detail. Shout out to QuirkyZombie and Quasel, who have a list of even more, but we're going to keep it basic. And then for those of you who really want the juicy, utter details, we'll go into that. However, so you have round start. Self-explanatory. The round has started. Now, there is also where the hull repair and all that gets handled. So that's at the very beginning before the sub-round starts. Sub-round 1, there are 3 of these. Sub-round 1 has the officer's ability, forbidden techs, and then the actual weapons attack apply. Then you have sub-round 2, which is just officer ability and just weapon attacks. And then finally sub-round 3, the exact same thing as you can see, and then round in. So what is this sub-round process? Well, that's weapons firing, and that's maybe a con ability that procs based on a weapon firing. And again, we can show some examples on the screen here in a second, but the basics of how it works is round start. We have sub-rounds that, as you can see, officers are activating before weapons and such. And as it continues to go down, we'll even have other opportunities for officers to activate if they are based on a state or based on something that's required to happen. For example, Khan, the original Khan from the game, he's incumbent upon the fact that he gets hit before he increases critical chance. However, that can show up in, round 2 at the very beginning of the sub round, or it can happen in sub round 3 from round 1. Just depends on when that happens. If it happens in round 3, he'll show up in the next round before everything else, as you can see in the officer's ability of sub-round 1. So this is where I've tried to just keep it as easy as possible, basic as possible, to explain how things work. I also want to point out that we are under the strong belief that individual officers have a priority ranking inside the officer ability list as well. This is why things like Icheb and Tuvok will seem to proc even before a morale could proc, even if you're self-procking morale. That said, that is a conjecture, a theory, etc. that maybe we can work on and figure out. Shout out to QuirkyZombie and Quasel, who helped with this video anyway. If y'all couldn't tell, they're good people. So this is the type of thing that will structure and sound. And heck, my card game has sub-rounds, so I get it. It's part of the thing. But let's get into a little bit more detail, should we? Yes, we should. All right, so this graph is going into a little bit more detail about what we just talked about. The main thing I wanted to show you here, as you can see the combat round, sub-round, breaking it into further parts, is I want you to see at the very end that officer/FT effects. Inside that sub-round, you also have an order of operations where the NPC would go before the player, where the attacker goes before the offender, and all of that is applying right there in the officer set. And it's important to point out because this is where that whole Icheb, Tuvok, etc. really comes into play, and other officers as well. However, these are kind of the main ones that we focus on. And it just shows you how it breaks down. And then as you can see below that, we have the weapon attack. How does that break down? Shot 1, officer triggering. Shot 2, officer triggering, etc. And again, this just kind of follows that same pattern. And it doesn't really deviate from this at all. And then it goes even further. So I want to show you a visual example using a battle log. So we do have the battle log behind me, but for the sake of using some already created graphics that are awesome, here we go. So here you can see it's designed with round 1, the sub-rounds included, and the effects, with also some good helpful information. Your game client knows these attacks have triggered con. Hence why I was using that example, because it's applicable to all players. Almost everybody, whether you're a low player in the 20s or an upper player, you've got con, you've probably experienced how it works. So it's just not displayed because it would be confusing. It only displays when officers apply their effects, which can only happen during the apply officer effects part of the sub-round. Here in round 2, con applies his buff afterwards. Just kind of what we were saying before. This is how you can see that order of operations procking down. And you can actually see it affected in the game itself. And it's going to continually follow this same pattern. The only question mark that we really have that we don't have a consistent answer on is that question of, okay, well, do specific officers have higher priority to other officers? And honestly, that's probably a great game design question. We'll see if we can get an answer for you. And if I do, I'll put it in the pinned comments. But all this information has been found by us pulling the data directly from battle logs. And there's even a real version of the battle log that you can grab that has more information than even the exportable CSV file. That's another conversation for a different day. You leave that to the nerds, right? You just need to find out how it works, right? Like, for example, not really talking about here, but if you're in an armada, you need to be the one with artifacts for the procking. But that's, again, another conversation for an armada video. Let's take these off the screen and get back into the basics, because we've already kind of delved into the weeds a little bit. But I still want people to understand that this is not complicated and it's easy to understand. So here's the example. This is from that player from SVG. Shout out to them. Thank you for participating in PvP arenas with me. It's cool to meet folks. As you can see, I initiated the attack. I attacked first. And you can find all the little things that we're looking for at the very top, where you can see, look, my Apex Shred activated first, my 7 of 9, my Garrick, my Invader Tuvok, my Icheb, all these things popping, popping, popping. Now with that happening, you see his morale is active, so that would have helped my Icheb anyway. And this is not a great example to show if we're just trying to show off the power of Icheb, because, well, if you can read, Icheb works by on round start against players if on a ship with no state. Well, he has nobody applying a state to me anyway. However, anybody who's experienced a Rotaran versus a Rotaran, everybody has heard the phrase, who attacked first, right? Because that ends up flipping the battle in the favor of that person, just like as it often will for hostiles. And you can see that working here as we get down here, I attack first. Thus, I get the first big shots off, and then he follows up with, that's a lot of shots from that Enterprise D. Calm it down there, big guy. God, my Lanta. Sweet niblets. But as you can see, shot count plus 5 rounds if hit by a player. You see that activation. And then we move to the next sub-round. Or we've moved to the next sub-round after this attack finishes. Now we've entered our next sub-round. So then we'll do the same thing as we move over here. You see the repairs happening before that first sub-round starts. Then we have the sub-round. Back to officer activations. Is there anything that happened that will cause an activation, whether it's getting hit by a player or whether it's just simply being alive, being active, depends on the officer and how that state is applied. As you see, we're following the exact same pattern. The fight order stays the same as round 1, as does the proc order, and everything just kind of starts to flow in that pattern that we've already displayed. Whether we're in round 1 or round 30, same thing consistently. Now, why does this matter? Because it allows you as a player to really determine your builds. Especially if you're into punching up on high hostiles or taking out players in PvP, you want to be able to dictate how these things work. And for example, y'all see me using the Nemesis / Rotarn all the time. Well, that means I really want to know how can I take advantage of things like these abilities right here. Increase the number of shots against players for interceptors. Well, why does that matter? Well, if I can attack first, that means that my first few shots, I'm going to have more of them and I'm going to get them off first. So if he was a really strong player and maybe he could beat me with his first shots, if I attacked first, that means I dealt damage first and I at least put some damage down. Maybe I can destroy him before he destroys me. Little things like that could be the difference between winning and losing in Star Trek Fleet Command. And the battle order, now that we can see it, that's how it works. Now, if you'd like to see more information or ask more questions, feel free to drop them down in the comment section down below. But understanding how the game works is crucial. And you don't necessarily need to be a math nerd downloading CSV files and playing with Excel spreadsheets to figure that out. You can just come to the YouTube video and look at the screen, look at the order of operations and go from there. Knowledge is power, whether you did the math yourself or you rely on nerds to do it for you. Dang nerds. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, smash the like button, live long and plunder, stay safe for the Space Cowboys. Deuces, that's me. Catch you on the next Star Trek Fleet Command video. Hope it helps. And remember, join the Discord if you haven't already so you can ask questions. You can become more knowledgeable about all the games that we play. See ya on the next one. That's it.
An even better outro than the intro. For the Empire and glory to your house.